Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always ready. What are we looking at today?
Well, a listener wrote in and asked us to tackle Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
A classic.
Definitely. And this listener specifically wanted to know about, well, how to apply the book's principles to, actually achieve success.
Sounds like they're ready to put in the work.
Exactly. So I think what we'll do is we'll go chapter by chapter and, really unpack the core ideas.
That's a great approach. Really get into the nuts and bolts.
Totally. And Think and Grow Rich, it really does lay out like a practical blueprint.
Oh, absolutely. It goes beyond just, positive thinking.
Yeah. It dives into the nitty-gritty of how successful people, actually think and act.
Right. And it's full of these incredible stories,
Oh, yeah, like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison.
Blondie can be people who literally changed the world.
Exactly. And what I find so compelling is that it shows how they, embodied these principles.
Right. It's not just theory.
Yeah. So, are you ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so the book starts strong with this concept of desire.
Right from the beginning.
Yeah, and it tells this fascinating story about Edwin Barnes, who was completely fixated on working with Thomas Edison.
Not just for him.
Exactly, there's a big difference there.
Huge. Barnes wasn't looking for a job. He wanted to be Edison's partner.
He had this, burning desire.
Oh, absolutely. And that desire, it fueled him. He didn't let anything stop him.
The book says he even hopped a freight train to get to Edison's lab.
I mean, talk about determination.
And then, when he finally met Edison, he didn't ask for a job. He presented himself as a future collaborator.
Bold move.
Right. And the amazing thing is, it worked.
Because Edison saw that unwavering determination in Barnes.
Yeah, and gave him a chance. So, what's the takeaway here? What can we learn from Barnes?
It all comes down to the intensity of your desire. It's not enough to just want something. You have to crave it.
Feel it in every fiber of your being.
Exactly. It becomes a driving force that pushes you to overcome obstacles.
So desire is the spark.
The initial ignition.
But, as we all know, it takes more than just wanting something to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the next principle, faith.
And the book illustrates this with a pretty powerful story.
Yeah, the story of Darby, the gold prospector.
Oh man, that one's heartbreaking, but also, so inspiring.
He was so close to striking gold, but he gave up.
Just 3 feet from the vein.
Can you imagine? He later used this experience to fuel his success in selling insurance.
He refused to let rejection define him.
He kept reminding himself that he'd given up on the gold, but wouldn't give up on himself.
Exactly. And that experience really shaped his approach.
How so?
Well, it instilled in him this unshakable faith in his own resilience. He learned that setbacks are inevitable, but...
They don't have to define us.
Right. He realized that success is often just beyond the point where most people give up.
So he developed this never give up mentality.
Exactly. A belief that success was inevitable as long as he kept pushing forward.
Wow. Okay, so we've got desire, the burning passion, and faith, the unwavering belief.
The foundation.
But even with those two ingredients, we know the road to success is rarely smooth.
Definitely not.
There are going to be setbacks, moments when you want to just quit.
And that's where persistence comes in.
And Think and Grow Rich uses a pretty intense analogy to illustrate
Oh
that.
yeah, the warrior who burned his ships.
Right. No turning back. No room for retreat.
It's about reaching that point where giving up is just not an option.
I could see how that mentality would be crucial in, anything you're trying to achieve.
Oh, absolutely. Starting a business, writing a book, breaking a bad habit.
Yeah, persistence is about more than just willpower.
It's about developing a mindset where quitting isn't even in your vocabulary.
It's about seeing setbacks as temporary detours, not dead ends.
Exactly. So we have desire, faith, and persistence.
The fuel that propels us forward.
But there's a whole other layer to this success equation.
And it all starts with the mind. This is where it gets really interesting. Think and Grow Rich dives deep into the power of thought, specifically the subconscious mind.
This is where the book gets into the mechanics of success, how our minds work.
Yeah, and it introduces this concept of autosuggestion.
Which is basically deliberately planting thoughts into your subconscious.
It's like we're programming our own mental software.
Exactly. But the key here is that the subconscious mind doesn't judge whether those thoughts are positive or negative.
It accepts whatever we feed it.
So if we're constantly bombarding ourselves with negativity and doubts...
We're setting ourselves up for failure.
Essentially, yeah. And the book shares some pretty powerful examples.
Oh yeah, like the story about the bank official.
Right, he was so consumed by the fear of disgrace that he literally died from it.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
It really shows how powerful our thoughts can be.
Absolutely. Our thoughts shape our reality.
So if negativity can be that destructive, imagine the potential of positive thinking.
Right, if we consistently focus on positive beliefs and empowering thoughts.
It can have a huge impact on our lives.
No doubt, we can attract opportunities, overcome challenges, achieve amazing things.
It's like we create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
A mental blueprint for the life we want to create.
And that brings us to another powerful tool. Imagination.
Think and Grow Rich emphasizes this, not just for creativity, but as a force for success.
Yeah, I love the story of Charles Schwab.
Oh yeah, the mastermind behind U.S. Steel. His story is amazing.
He shared his vision for the future of steel at a dinner party, and
his words were so compelling that they sparked the creation of a billion-dollar corporation.
So it's about using imagination to visualize and manifest our goals.
Exactly. Imagination is the bridge between our inner world of thoughts and the outer world of results.
It's like having an internal architect designing the blueprint for our success.
Perfect analogy.
But to build that success, we need the right materials.
The right knowledge.
And that's where specialized knowledge comes in.
The book differentiates this from general knowledge.
So it's not just about being well-rounded.
It's about mastering your chosen craft.
You need knowledge specific to your field to really excel.
To solve problems, create value, innovate.
Like Thomas Edison and Henry Ford.
They didn't have fancy degrees, but they were constantly seeking out knowledge and applying it.
So inspiring. It's about being a student of your craft, always learning.
Exactly. And sometimes seeking out that knowledge means surrounding ourselves with the right people.
Which brings us to the mastermind principle.
The power of collaboration.
Forming alliances with like-minded individuals who can support our growth.
The book talks about synergy, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
When we surround ourselves with brilliant minds, we create this collective intelligence.
A network of support and accountability.
It makes you realize that success is rarely a solo endeavor.
Think of Henry Ford and his close relationships with people like Thomas Edison.
Harvey Firestone, John Bros.
They formed a mastermind group, leveraging each other's strengths.
So powerful. We don't have to go it alone. Finding the right people can make all the difference.
And that support becomes crucial when we face challenges.
When doubt and fear threaten to derail us.
Which brings us to a topic that often gets ignored.
Fear.
Think and Grow Rich acknowledges this as a real obstacle. It names 6 basic fears.
Poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death.
These fears are deeply ingrained in us.
They can really hold us back.
But the book doesn't leave us paralyzed. It offers a way out.
So how do we combat these fears?
First, we need to be aware of them, identify the specific fears holding us back. Then we can start to understand their root causes and develop strategies to overcome them.
And this is where the other principles come in, right? Exactly. Desire, faith, persistence, the power of the subconscious, imagination, specialized knowledge, the mastermind.
You can use all of these to conquer our fears.
Absolutely. Think and Grow Rich gives us a framework for transforming fear into fuel.
Wow, so we don't have to be victims of our fears.
We can choose to face them and emerge stronger on the other side.
Like fear is a test, and how we respond to that test determines our trajectory.
Our ability to create the life we truly desire.
And speaking of creating the life we desire,
There's one more principle.
one that ties everything together.
The sixth sense.
This is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
But that, my friend, is where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive into Think and Grow Rich.
All right, listeners, you'll have to stay tuned.
Welcome back. We're picking up our deep dive into Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
And I'm really curious to unpack this concept of the sixth sense.
You know, it's a topic that often sparks a lot of, intrigue and even some misconceptions.
When I first heard about it in this context, I have to admit I pictured something kind of mystical.
Yeah, it's easy to go there, but the book actually presents it in a very grounded and empowering way.
So how does Hill define the sixth sense, and how does it connect to success?
He describes it as an intuitive faculty, like a heightened awareness that goes beyond our 5 senses.
That inner voice we all have.
Exactly, that gut feeling that guides us even when we can't logically explain it.
Like an internal compass.
Exactly, but instead of pointing north, it guides us toward fulfilling our deepest desires.
So it's not about abandoning logic, but rather integrating intuition into our decisions.
Precisely. Learning to trust those subtle nudges, those flashes of insight.
Okay, so we all have this sixth sense, this inner compass, but the book suggests that for most people, it's kind of dormant.
Right. Buried under fear, doubt, limiting beliefs, all that.
So how do we awaken it? How do we make it a more reliable guide?
Well, that's where the other principles we've discussed come into play.
Desire, faith, persistence, the power of the subconscious, all that.
Right. As we master those, we naturally become more attuned to our intuition.
So it's like the more we align ourselves with those principles of success, the more we open ourselves up to that sixth sense.
Exactly. The book uses Henry Ford as an example. He had this remarkable ability to, anticipate market trends.
Almost like he could see the future.
Well, in a way, yes. Hill suggests this was a manifestation of the sixth sense. Ford wasn't just relying on data, he was tapping into something deeper.
A deeper well of knowing.
Precisely. And that's the power of the sixth sense. It lets us see beyond the obvious, to sense opportunities that others miss.
But it also requires trust, right? Trusting something beyond our conscious control.
Absolutely. You have to be willing to surrender to that inner guidance, even if it leads you down an unconventional path.
So how do we practically develop this sixth sense? Does Hill give any specific techniques?
He doesn't lay out a step-by-step guide, and I think that's intentional. Developing the sixth sense, it's a personal journey. It requires introspection, self-awareness.
And a willingness to listen to that inner voice.
Exactly. It's about becoming more attuned to those subtle feelings, those intuitive nudges.
Paying attention to synchronicities, those coincidences that might actually be more than just coincidence.
Right, and trusting that there's a wisdom within us that knows the way, even when we feel lost.
So we've explored the six principles, but it feels like the sixth sense is like the culmination of them all.
I think you're right. It's the master key that unlocks our full potential, leading us to a life of purpose and fulfillment.
The bridge between our desires and the results we want to create.
Well said. And this brings up an interesting question. If we could cultivate our own invisible counselors, as Hill suggests.
A group of wise individuals from history whose guidance we could seek.
Exactly. Who would we choose?
Wow, that's a great question. Who would you pick for your counsel?
It really is amazing how Think and Grow Rich continues to resonate with people even today.
It's like those principles, they tap into something fundamental about human nature, our desire to achieve,
Oh, absolutely. And something that's been on my mind since we talked about the sixth sense, it's not just intuition, right?
I mean, it's more than just gut feelings.
Yeah, it's also this heightened awareness of, our surroundings, the subtle cues and signals that are always there.
Like we're tuning into a frequency that's always been there, but we haven't been paying attention.
That's it, exactly. The book talks about developing our creative imagination, which isn't just daydreaming. It's about actively visualizing our goals.
Seeing the possibilities even when others only see limitations.
Right. And when we do that, we start to notice things we might have missed before. Opportunities that were hidden in plain sight.
Oh, that reminds me of that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Perfect analogy. It's like once we set our intentions and start taking action, the universe steps in to help us.
Guides us toward the resources and connections we need.
And that's where the sixth sense comes in. Being open to those synchronicities, those seemingly random events that, might not be so random after all.
Like those aha moments. So it's not just about hard work, it's also about trusting that something bigger is at play.
Absolutely. Surrendering to something larger than ourselves. And that can be a very comforting thought.
It is. It takes some of the pressure off, knowing we don't have to figure everything out on our own.
Right. We can tap into a wisdom that's far greater than our own individual minds.
Which brings us back to those invisible counselors. If you could choose a group of wise individuals from history to guide you, who would be on your council?
Oh, that's a tough one. So many incredible minds to choose from. But I think I have to start with Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man.
Exactly. He was a master of art, science, engineering. He just embodies that insatiable curiosity,
A true visionary, always pushing the boundaries. Who else would you include?
I'd also have to have Marie Curie on my council. A pioneer in science, breaking barriers in a male-dominated field. Her dedication is so inspiring.
Absolutely. Her story is a reminder that we can achieve anything, no matter the obstacles. Passion, perseverance, and that pursuit of knowledge. It's all there.
And for wisdom and spiritual insight, I'd include the Dalai Lama.
Oh, such a great choice. His teachings on compassion and inner peace are so important, especially today.
Right. His message of kindness and interconnectedness is more relevant now than ever.
He reminds us that true happiness comes from within, from cultivating inner peace.
So, quite a council we've assembled here.
It really is. And it highlights this idea that we're not alone on our journey. There's so much support and guidance available to us.
We just have to be open to receiving it.
And that's what Think and Grow Rich is all about. It's not just about learning principles, it's about cultivating a mindset.
A way of being in the world that's open to possibility, to abundance, to realizing our full potential.
It's about believing in ourselves, trusting our intuition, and never giving up on our dreams.
Well said. And that's where we leave you today. Take these principles, apply them to your own life, and see what incredible things you can create.
Remember, you have within you the power to achieve anything you set your mind to. Go make those dreams a reality.